Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Inside Lowell podcast. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you from the WellPoint Studios here in downtown Lowell. Unicare is now WellPoint. New name, same commitment to Massachusetts and to its members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. I want to thank our friends at WellPoint and all of our sponsors for making these Inside Lowell podcasts possible. Of course, our friends at Washington Savings Bank. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, the newest member of the Inside Lowell family, from affordable to luxurious apartments for all. Boston North Company, business solutions for restaurant and retail. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to Greater Lowell since 1925. Francis E. Preventure, the agency Greater Lowell has trusted for more than 4 decades. And last but not least, the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the excitement and action of indoor football to the Tsonga Center on the campus of UMass Lowell. Thank you to all of them. And thank you to my special guest on this podcast. You recognize her by now, if you didn't already. She is the Congresswoman for the 3rd Congressional District, which includes the city of Lowell. And she checks in here whenever she has some spare time. Congresswoman Lori Trahan, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Teddy.
I appreciate it because you've, as we were kind of talking about before I hit record, you've had a whirlwind schedule, which literally, you still jet lagged from flying back from Normandy?
Not yet. I got in last night, and so I suspect it'll maybe hit me later in the day. But so far, so good.
Well, what was that experience like? You know, I've seen the ceremonies throughout my life, and this one being the 80th anniversary, and the realization that the next time they gather for something this big, there probably won't be any survivors left. What was it like to be there in person? I can't imagine how moving it must have been for you.
It was incredible, and I'm so glad that I was able to represent Massachusetts at the 80th anniversary of D-Day, because you're right. We had over 200 living veterans of World War II, many of whom, fought in action at Omaha and Utah beaches, which we were just feet from. And it was just, it was so moving to see them, to talk to them, to hear their stories about that day, but also about a similar time that we're facing, right? You know, thank goodness that Allied forces led by the United States came when they did to liberate France and then the rest of Europe. And so it's no coincidence that President Zelensky was there, because we're in a similar moment right now. And so to hear the veterans talk about this important moment and how we must keep this progress going and our allies together was just it was super resonant, but it was also just a privilege and an honor to talk to them.
I'm told it's really indescribable when you get there. Like, you can see the pictures and whatnot, but when you're actually there and you see just how many gravestone markers there are and whatnot, that it's
9,387, right? And you walk along that hallowed ground where so many men, men in their barely out of their teens, fought so valiantly. Donald Axon was someone who I went to go look for because he was from Lowell, and he died fighting. Trying to get through to the beach, to the cliffs, and he went to Lowell High School just like us, and so you think of the bravery that just these men had 80 years ago, and how committed they were to the mission, paying the ultimate sacrifice for our country, but also, for the world, so that we could have the freedoms and the democracy that we cherish today. It was overwhelming, but I'm so glad I had the honor to go.
Awesome. I have to, it's on my bucket list of things I have to go see. But you're back. You mentioned you flew back last night.
Yes.
And you immediately resumed bringing home the bacon, which, but you've been doing at a pretty good little clip over these last couple of months. You're literally just arriving to our studios from an announcement this morning.
Yes, we were there with the administrator of the EPA, David Cash, to announce another $7 million to communities across my district, but Lowell received $5.5 million to clean up contaminated sites along the VFW highway across from Top Donut. So it's great. I mean, the federal government used to kind of keep pace with cleaning up Superfund sites or brownfield sites so that they could be redeveloped and used for economic development, attracting private investment. And these investments are long overdue. So to see so many funds in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, in President Biden's Invest in America agenda, and then see them come to our communities is, look, that's the easiest vote I've ever cast as a member, was voting for the bipartisan infrastructure law, because it has been transformative for Lowell and communities like it.
Which specific site, have they announced the specific sites in Lowell that
Yes, so there's a number. Yeah, there's a number of sites along the VFW highway and in the Canal District.
Okay.
And so we're going to do a separate announcement for Lowell so that we can highlight the specific timeline and all the sites. But this was a major step to sort of announcing the bigger investment with all the communities. So the mayor of Lawrence came to this one, the town manager, the town administrator of Clinton, so that we could do one big one. But it's it'll help. It'll help with all of everything we're trying to do with economic development here in the city.
Yeah, I know the administration, the councilors, the local reps and senators get very excited when these announcements are made. This comes on the heels of some housing, CDBG, and ESG money that you announced, and it was like 7.87 for your district, but you get play a little favoritism, I think, towards Lowell.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I have to hand it to City Manager Golden, Mayor Rourke, the entire council, the DPD team. I mean, they are putting together really great applications. I mean, many of the grants that they're winning are highly competitive. They're winning $5.5 million that they just won. That was one of the largest awards that the state saw. And it's just testament to the work that they're doing in terms of putting together a compelling application. I do the easy part, right? I write the letters of support. I call the administration to, keep putting in a good word. But there's nothing quite like having a competitive grant application. And that's what the city's been able to do.
So over 3.1 million of that came to Lowell, of the nearly 8 million that you got. Yeah. And I almost get the sense you downplayed your role a little bit, though, because I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands, of what people think are deserving applications that go in. How does the process work? Like, how is the decision made in DC, and do you testify on behalf of these projects? And what do you kind of do to convince folks?
It's a great question, because a lot of the work was done on the front end, right? So when we were writing the bipartisan infrastructure law, some of the provisions that we were really adamant about including was that communities that had long been left behind be at the front of the line, right? So one of the reasons why you're seeing clean energy buses come to the LRTA, a community like Lowell, is because for so long the big cities got those awards, and mid-sized cities like Lowell didn't. Especially, gateway communities in Massachusetts. So on the front end, we made sure that they would have a chance. And then, look, we help with the application process. If there's multiple stakeholders that can, strengthen the application, we make sure that happens. And then we call the administration. We don't really have a huge say in how those get awarded. It really is, meritocracy and a whole different bunch of factors. But, we call and help make the case all the time, especially when communities are ready. So, sometimes when applications are in like the design phase, rather than they're ready to put a shovel in the ground and this is the last bit of funding that they need. So based on a bunch of different factors, we'll help make the case for why Lowell should win.
So you don't go in there and do some arm twisting or threatening to kick some ass.
I think you know me pretty well. Every opportunity that I have, I always have a card with me, whether I'm at the White House or with an agency official or a decision maker in the process, to make that plug. So, we're pretty persistent, but I haven't had to twist any arms.
All right. Well, you've been successful at it for your district, and I know Haverhill and Lawrence and Fitchburg and Leominster, all your communities are really benefiting from this. And the way I've always kind of viewed the job of Congress, similar to the state house in Massachusetts, is the House is kind of the people who, for lack of a better term, bring home the bacon. And then the Senate is a chamber that deals with some of the international issues and treaties, et cetera. And I think that's how the founding fathers delivered it. So you're doing a pretty good job. And I want to highlight one more thing you did recently, the Boys and Girls Club. You brought them money, a significant amount of money to help get some of these folks started on career paths as well, which was very important for the community.
Yeah, and what a great event that was. When Joe Hungler came to me and said, they don't need much, right? It was a modest investment. It was $2 million. But each of the participating clubs, so the Boys and Girls Club that represent all of my gateway cities, would each do $400,000. They'd get $400,000 apiece. But then when I showed up to the announcement and I saw the programs that many were created by, the young men and women who work and who benefit from these programs, as far as workforce, career training, even just financial literacy, whatever they need to kind of get a leg up on starting their own career or making those important decisions. That's what this money went to. So it was really fun to see. I mean, look, we all know how valuable the Boys and Girls Clubs are in our community. We're incredibly proud of the one we have in Lowell. And it doesn't take much, right? Just a little bit of funding to help them stand up another program to help our young people. Those are easy ones.
All right.
And just one thing I just have to say about our senators, you are absolutely right in terms of like how the two are constituted. But I have to say, Senators Markey and Warren, because of how difficult it has been in the appropriation process in the House, because it's under Republican control, I often have to go to them to say, you got to get this in on the Senate side so that we have a fighting chance of winning these funds in conference. And so they've been incredible partners in that regard, because it's been a little bit hard fought in the last 2 years.
Yeah. It is an election year. You're running unopposed, right?
Yes.
How does that feel? While a lot of your colleagues are going to sweat out, hard fought races and control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, you're going to kind of get to kick back and relax a little, aren't you?
Rest assured, I will not be kicking back or relaxing, because I'm going to be a part of the team that gets the good story out there in terms of what happens when Democrats have the gavels in the House. We have so many great bills that we're seeing the effects from, just like the announcement today. But it's a bit of a relief, right? It frees me up a little bit to help people who are in really tough districts win, make sure we flip the House. I mean, this has been a really tough House to work in. It's kind of been defined by a lot of dysfunction and chaos, and I think we can really make the case that that's not helpful to the American people. They want us to go there and solve problems. They want us to work together. Bipartisanship is not a bad word. It's like required when you're in divided government, and this has been a Congress that hasn't been. They've been forced to do bipartisan deals because of the dynamics in their conference, but it's not what they want to do. And so, we've had a lot of wasted time in the House. And so I think we've got, a contrast to draw for voters as we head into the election.
Nice little segue to some votes that I wanted to ask you about that. I would have bet you would vote the opposite way, and my phone blew up the moment those vote results were known. But I do want to ask about your vote. You actually voted to support Speaker Johnson when your colleague, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, tried to replace the Speaker again. Yeah. You joined a number of Democrats who basically saved his job.
Yeah, and I think look, there's a lot of votes that lead up to the main vote, but one of the votes that I voted yes on was the motion to table, because we all know what Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to do, and it's futile, right? I mean, we know what happens when he is vacated, and that's going to be weeks, if not months, of them trying to find a new speaker. Nothing happens in the House of Representatives when that happens. And right now, people back home, they want us to do something about inflation and prices and making sure that their corporate, price gouging ends, right? So like, there are so many things for us to work on, that to have that happen, when people just want more from Washington, Yeah, I was happy to make that vote. And look, he did do the right thing in terms of bringing the national security package to the floor for an up or down vote. And as long as we have a partner who will, allow the House to work as it's, intended, we'll go ahead and work in a bipartisan way and be the adults in the room.
Besides, they may get to have that fight in January if things break their way. You guys can do your own speaker if they break your way.
And we're ready. We're like unanimously behind Hakeem Jeffries.
Okay. There were two votes that surprised me that you took. There was one, and I want to give you a chance to explain yourself.
Yeah.
My phone blew up when you took them, as I mentioned. The first one was you voted against deporting migrants who are accused of assaulting police officers. Why?
Yeah, so I think one thing to just table set is it's an election year, and there have been a lot of bills that the Republicans have brought to the floor to sort of have this gotcha narrative. It is already in our statute that if you assault a police officer, it's a felony. And if you are undocumented immigrant in our country, the criminal status is even more. In many cases, you're deported, automatically. And so no one is trying to repeal that. There is no reason to actually take a vote on that or to weaken the due process that's already in place. And so for me, there are a lot of things that the American people are asking for us to do to get at the heart of, their economic situation, protecting contraception. And this was nothing more than a messaging bill by Republicans to kind of put Democrats in a bind. And there's no reason to have a bill when we already have a strong statute that is enforced. I mean, people are prosecuted for assaulting police officers when that happens today, and that process works. So I think it's just a sham, and so I didn't vote.
Okay. And the other one, similar, involved non-citizens voting in D.C. elections. There were 52 Democrats who joined Republicans in voting for that. You actually voted against it. What was your thinking there?
Yeah, so the timing of this vote was interesting because it was right before Memorial Day when we had an opportunity to put some votes on the floor to benefit our veterans and our Gold Star families. And that's truly what we thought we were going to be doing heading into the Memorial Day weekend. Instead, again, right, we have laws on the books. Not only do we have laws on the books that prohibit non-citizens from voting in our elections, but it's a rare occurrence. In fact, when Speaker Johnson got up to talk about this bill, he couldn't cite a single example of this being an issue or this happening. It's just another example of, the outrage that plays out on Fox News. The House Republicans sort of following because they think it's a safe bet for them and doing the bidding of Trump, who, look, I did vote for the motion to table and allow Speaker Johnson to stay in place. But he needs to stay in Trump's good graces in order to, to save his job every single day. And so these votes are just election year votes to, kowtow to President Trump. We already have statute on the books. No more is needed. And instead, I went out with a statement that basically said we should be doing things that will help our veterans get the health care that they need, take whatever friction out of the system so that they can, navigate the services that they need better. And I just wish that he had been a little bit more earnest in putting substantive legislation on the floor rather than all of this election year politics.
All right. And I saved the most controversial question for last. You had posted pictures of being out at the NCAA women's basketball Final Four, the Caitlin Clark show, as it came to be known, and it's continued into the WNBA.
Yeah.
I know you take great pride in women's sports getting, the notoriety they're getting, especially women's professional basketball now, pretty much because of Caitlin Clark. So should she have made the Olympic team, which she was left off of over the weekend?
So I think it's important to say that it's not for me to decide. I mean, we can all have opinions on it, but that is not for me to decide. In fact, sports is still one of the places where a meritocracy is alive and well. I have to say, watching Caitlin Clark, I mean, she's one of the first, athletes who was able to benefit, women athletes to benefit off of NIL. And what we're seeing with that is that she has this fan following, right? This incredible, and as she should. I mean, she is a phenomenal player, and it's actually lifting up the WNBA. Those sponsorships followed her. Now more people are watching the WNBA. And that's just a fantastic thing that has happened for women in sports. But there are a number of unbelievable WNBA players that have been playing for a long time. They just haven't had the attention because there was never any sponsorship or viewership of college women's basketball. And so I do think that, I've got a colleague of mine in Indiana, Jim Banks, who is, calling out flagrant fouls against Caitlin Clark. I think everyone needs to sit back and let women's sports just sort of, continue to be the awesome, sort of on the awesome trajectory that it is. And so we'll be rooting for the Olympic team no matter who was on it. I'm sure it's going to be an incredible performance.
All right. So you didn't play general manager there, but would you have been more likely to watch the U.S. women's team in the Olympics?
I'm going to watch no matter what. Hey, look, there are so many other players besides Caitlin Clark. I mean, look, but like my daughter, I mean, she's a huge fan of Paige Buckers in UConn. I mean, there's just so many other players that I think are having a moment, and you see with, right through their college careers, and we're going to see more WNBA teams, I think, as a result. So I can't wait for the Olympics. I actually just left Paris, so I saw all the, the beach volleyball courts underneath the Eiffel Tower and all the new venues that are going. So it's going to be an exciting time. I think the United States is going to have a great outcome.
All righty. And with that, we'll let you go. Congresswoman Lori Trahan, as always, thank you for taking the time to join us.
You bet, Teddy. Thank you.
All right. And we thank the Congresswoman, and we thank you for joining us here on our latest Inside Lowell podcast, Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place. Until next time, be safe.